Alright, suppose Mike and Dave are making measurements for a road paving crew. They need to know how much land slopes downward along a particular stretch of road. Dave walks 80 feet from Mike and holds up a long pole perpendicular to the ground with markings every inch along it. Mike looks at the pole through a sighting instrument. Looking straight across the parallel to the horizon, Mike sights a point on the pole 50 inches above the ground and calls it point A. So basically what's going on here, there's a slope. Mike is up here with his sighting equipment. Dave walks down here and he holds a pole that's straight up like this. Now Mike uses sighting equipment and goes straight across. And he hits it right here. What angle is being formed right here? Alright, a 90-degree angle. Now, in the problem it says, how high up does Mike actually, what number does he see on the pole? Not 80. 50. Dave walked 80 feet. So we have this, and it says, the question says, I want to find the angle of depression, or the slope of the road. It's not, that's not an if and or question, find one or the other. It's the same thing. No. We're finding an angle. So we're finding this angle right here. So you can ask a question. If you're finding a slope, when you talk about slope of a road, you're talking about angles. Yeah, and if you hear anything about find elevation or depression, you're talking about angles. Alright, so we're finding an angle. So with our angle, we're going to have to use those inverse trig things. So now, based on this angle, I have, where's the hypotenuse? Which one's the hypotenuse? 80. So, alright, so this is my hypotenuse. Now, the 50, is that the opposite or the adjacent? Opposite. So, I have opposite side, and I have a hypotenuse. So, which one, and let's just say that's x, because we're creative. And it's the X file, so let's just use X for everything right now. So far, the 2 episodes have been fantastic. Now, I have opposite, I have hypotenuse of the SOHCAHTOA. Which one has an opposite and a hypotenuse? Sine. So I'm not going to use a cosine, I'm not going to use a tangent. So I'm going to say the sine of the angle. What's the angle? The sine of x is equal to, what's the opposite side? 50 over 80. Exactly right. Alright, so this is the setup. I'm going to get rid of the words and I'm just going to have the math up here. Now, in order to properly use the inverses, you guys eventually will get used to it, but what you get is the inverse sine of the sine of x is equal to the inverse sine of 50 over 80. Because we're trying, you always use the inverse when you're trying to find the angle. You're not dumb. And don't be sorry, you're asking good questions. When do you use the inverse? We use it when we're trying to find that angle. Now, what does the inverse sine and the sine do to each other? Well, what does adding and subtracting do to each other? Cancel each other out. So these two right here cancel each other out, and I'm left with x is equal to the inverse sine of 50 over 80. Now, remember what our problem with the calculator is? It's in radians. And we're not going to change it because you're not allowed to change the settings on the calculators. So I have to do this. When I type this into the calculator, what we have to add is that crazy darkened triangle that's pointing to the right, and what two letters? DD. So now, and I apologize for sitting down and not working everything. My back is killing me again. So that's what we want to do. So we go to our calculator. And we go to trig. We go sine. I'm going to put in a fraction. 50 over 80. And then we hit control here. There's that. Whoops. All right, be quiet. Calm down. We end up with 38.6822 degrees. Now, the instructions said go to the nearest tenth. But first off, typing it into the calculator, since our calculators are in radian mode and we're going to keep them in radian mode, we have to put this DD there. So I'll just do it one more time for you. It was the sine. Here's what we did. We go inverse sine. We want 50 over 80. Then you hit right and you close the parentheses. Then you hit control book. It gets you the arrow. You hit DD and you get your answer. 38.6822. Now we got to go back to here. This was our answer, but we need it to the nearest tenth. So how do you round this to the nearest tenth? I got to round it to that spot, so what's the 8 going to do to the 6? Make it a 7. 38.7 degrees. So basically what's going on here is the slope of the road is about 38.7 degrees. So you have a downward slope of the road of 38.7 degrees. No, you round it to the nearest, or you round up, you round the 6 up because we're rounding to the nearest tenth.